for us better than we can plan them ourselves.
You're listening to the Paul Harrell Program, brought to you by Conduit Media Group.
Hey folks, welcome to the program. Thank you so much for being with us today. This is hour number 2. My name is Paul, and we do appreciate you being with us. So we've been going over several legislators' impressions of the session. We had one last hour with State Representative David Meeks. This hour, we want to talk to freshman State Representative Aaron Pilkington. He is from District 69. Aaron, welcome back to the program.
Hey, thanks for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. Hey, can you tell us real quick, I've got the map pulled up, but where is District 69?
So District 69 is all of Johnson County and a little bit of Pope. So that includes Clarksville, Lamar, Coal Hill, Hartman, and London.
Okay, all of Johnson. So we got listeners, hopefully, your constituents listening on KARV 610 AM, 101.3 FM. So hopefully they are listening, fingers crossed. So, Aaron, I mean, feel free, sir, give us your impression of the session 2017, an overview. Feel free.
Well, I'd say my impression overall was that we came with a set of objectives, and for the most part, I feel that we got those done. You know, like the military retiree tax cuts. For me, a big one was getting the provider-led organized care pass, which was a huge issue during the last session, and, you know, it was one of those things people didn't think we'd be able to get done this session, and we did. So, you know, I think for me, I feel like, you know, we had a set, you know, objectives to go through, and we got those done for the most part. And then, you know, half of it, too, was killing a lot of bad legislation that was coming through as well. And, you know, there's a couple of bills that, you know, even got to the floor, but yet, you know, only received about 14 votes. And so I was kind of happy that how we, you know, didn't get too crazy on passing more and more legislation when sometimes the thing we need to do is not govern as much.
What were some of you talk about bad legislation, elaborate on that. What legislation were you happy to kill?
Well, one of the pieces of legislation that I was happy to see go down was it was a bill to require that schools have RNs in their schools. And so, on the face of it, it seems like, well, what's wrong with that? You know, we want well-qualified nurses to be in our schools to help our students. Unfortunately, I mean, the cost would have been astronomical, and this is jobs that are already being performed by LPNs right now, and less than that, just fine. And so it was one of those things where good intentions, but it would have cost our schools tons of money, which would have cost us more tax dollars, all because, you know, someone wanted us, you know, to have an RN instead of an LPN, and really it wouldn't have been that huge of a change in services. And so I was very happy to see that one, us get rid of that one.
Okay. So as you started your overview, we're talking with State Representative Aaron Pilkington. You said that you had a list of objectives to go through, and then you first mentioned the military tax cut for retirees. Now, that's specifically aligned with some of the governor's objectives. So my question is, when you say a list of objectives to go through, are you talking about that those are objectives from the governor?
No, obviously there's things that link up. We as a Republican caucus kind of went in and things we were interested to get to see to get accomplished. And so, you know, those things always don't necessarily align one-on-one with, you know, with what the governor wanted. You know, we just wanted to come in and we wanted to a better government for our constituents who voted for us. And so passing good legislation, like I said, like the provider-led organized care, you know, that's supposed to produce savings, eliminate the waiting list, which is a big problem that, you know, we hadn't been able to address for a long time. And, you know, being able to get those things accomplished, I guess, is what I was more or less referring to us as conservatives in the House who are wanting to get done.
So talk to me about the quest for revenue. Do you think there was an unusual quest for new revenue inflows to the government? And talk about, I mean, Republicans being asked to vote for that. I mean, what were your thoughts on that?
Well, I think one of the things was, you know, when we had the downturn, I believe in February of collections not being as high, you know, everyone started freaking out. And it's just one of those things, I mean, everyone's just freaking out because this big echo chamber of, oh my gosh, oh my gosh, oh my gosh. And then, March came around and returns were up, and then everyone cooled, and there wasn't this huge quest for revenue, like you said. And it's kind of one of those interesting things that I think what we need to do is sometimes realize, believe in what we're saying, that, we believe by cutting taxes will encourage growth, and by, this growth in our economy, we don't need to have a higher tax rate because we'll have, more producers. More produced at a lower tax rate produces more revenue for the state as opposed to having few producers with high taxes on it. And so I think that kind of, pushed a lot of it too. And obviously, people are wanting to do larger tax cuts overall. And so a big problem is, well, let's raise here so we can cut here. But, there's kind of a problem with that because, like with the internet tax, people say, well, that already exists. Well, that's, it's a new burden. My thing is I think some of the people have the really right idea where, well, let's get this so then we can do income tax reduction. But if they're not linked together, people are very afraid to.
They didn't want to link them together.
Trust someone, say they'll yeah, and get them together. And that's why I'm really optimistic for this task force, because you can address a lot of those issues. Because we need broad-based reform. We need to get rid of some of these exemptions. We have a very large patchwork network of where revenue's coming from, where is it specifically allocated to, this and that, and it's very confusing. I would even say as a rev working in there, trying to sometimes track down where everything comes from and where it's all going. I mean, it's
and I imagine as a freshman, you have to, you have to believe a lot of what people are telling you, and there's a lot of benefit of the doubt that I've talked to people, they go through their freshman session and then, they're kind of like, maybe a year or two later, they're like, well, I don't know if what they told me on this was actually accurate, to be nice about it.
Yeah, and I think as a freshman, the best advice I got was kind of, find people who share the same philosophical beliefs as you. Talk to them, trust them, but at the same time, always kind of verify. And so, luckily for me, there's definitely some good conservatives who I kind of would listen to on these issues, who knew what they were talking about, who were very knowledgeable, and that helped a lot. And there are obviously leaders in the House that, sometimes it was when you were trying to figure out certain issues, they could be kind of guidances, and I was thankful for that. And thankful for, some of those people kind of took out a hand and said, let me help you out here and help you understand this process.
You mentioned the how people kind of freaked out once the February numbers came in. The March numbers come in, and we're only down $15 million instead of the $60 million. A week after you guys, I guess the day after you guys leave, I guess last Monday, and adjourn. The new numbers come out for I guess the new numbers come out for March this month, and it turns out now we were $50 million down in collections to back up to $65 million shortfall. Are we in a budget crisis? I kind of feel like whatever information we know, regardless of what administration is there, it's always worse. And we have, we've increased spending $165 million from one year to the next. We have a $109 million Medicaid bill due. What are your thoughts? And to me, and I guess I asked that, Aaron, because that's why I think Republican leadership asked other Republicans to continue to vote for more revenue from the government, because I think they know they have to have it. What are your thoughts?
Well, I think the big pressure is, they don't want to eventually have to do cuts to certain government services, and I think that's something, we really need to do is say, can we really cut some areas? Where are some areas that we don't necessarily need to be in as a state government, which is hard to do because obviously you're down there and you hear from those people as soon as you're going to make a cut. I mean, they'll line the hallways of the Capitol to wave signs and shit. But I think we need to get better reforms to address some of those issues. There's talks about a healthcare special session to address Arkansas Works, to put in a work requirement. I know some other states are doing that as well, and so really interested. with a lot of that, because if we're, able to on this, you need to be doing this, kicking people off. I think that'll help us with our budget right now. But I think you need to on the.
And so, Aaron, are you there? We're kind.
Our economy grow.
You're kind of cutting in and out. I'm sorry. We kind of lost maybe the last 15 seconds that you said there. I guess I
was just saying is sometimes I think we just need to, with our cuts, believe in them that by cutting taxes we will grow the economy, and by growing the economy, our revenue will be fine.
Yeah. I mean, I certainly hope that'd be the case. It's hard to me. It's hard to do that. The governor cut $50 million, which I'm a huge fan of tax cuts. He cut $50 million that doesn't really go into effect until next year on a population that really doesn't pay a lot of taxes to begin with. But then we've increased spending $165 million, and I think that's making people nervous. Will you talk to me a little bit about? I mean, were there any things that you wanted to get done? Were there any ideas that you wanted to accomplish as a body with 76 Republicans and a massive majority in the Senate that you didn't get accomplished? Maybe something that you thought was going to happen or maybe going to be a lot easier that wasn't?
I think, like I said, broad-based tax reform, it was something that I wish we could have done. I wish we would have simplified it a little better. Obviously, that didn't get done. We have this task force. I'm really hoping that this task force will produce what we wanted to see happen that we didn't. And I'm cautiously optimistic about it. And that's what I'm hoping they will be able to bring us a plan that we can implement that will get everyone on board, and we can finally get it done.
What do you think? What were some of the reasons you were hearing as why we couldn't do that now? Just to be honest with you, I don't have a lot of confidence in the task force because they always create task forces, and to me it never seems to end out in a conservative way. That plus we have leadership saying that it's not conservative. The governor has said it's not conservative to absorb a tax cut and cut it out of the budget, that you have to pay for it. So to me, it just feels like it's going to be more of a shell game. Those are just my opinions. I could be totally wrong. But it was January 10th. I had confidence in broad-based tax reform as well. But on January 10th, the governor gives his joint session, or his speech to the joint session of the legislature, and it says basically, no. I mean, the very reason you guys are down there, you're only down there and have constitutional authority every other year. And yet on day number 2 or 3, it was like, we're not going to talk about this, and I guess why? I mean, did anybody ask why, or did people just say, okay?
Well, I think with some of the things to do with taxes is, I think I remember hearing someone say, if we passed every piece of legislation that was a tax cut, we would have no revenue. We'd have no money to pay anyone in the government. And so the problem, though, is there need to be kind of a better idea of let's get a concise message. This is something we can all get on board with, which I think the task force will do. And I know you say you don't have a lot of confidence in it, but the thing is we don't have to necessarily do it just because the task force says so. We as Republicans can always say, you know what, we don't like that approach. We're not gonna listen to that. Now, granted that yes, I understand them having a task force; they kind of have the authority on it, but
it's a lot harder.
We still, as legislators. But I think we as legislators still hold the cards, and a lot of times too, people always hear from back home, and if they go, my people back home are telling me this is a bad deal, they don't like it. I mean, legislators do listen to that.
Yeah,
for better or for worse.
Well, and I would hope that that's the case, but in the past that's not the case, because these task forces, they spend all this money on studies, and in my personal opinion, I want the full 135-member body to make the decisions, not just in the end, but I want them to be a part of the debate, because essentially it's easier to control a smaller amount of legislators, and I feel like that's why this is done. Let's whittle down to a select few, and they pay for this study and that study. And to me, and I am only judging this from the healthcare task force, and in some cases the working group on Common Core. In some cases, we have a predetermined outcome where we want to arrive. And if those parameters are set at, say, we're not actually going to cut government, we're going to make sure that we just shuffle the deck and the government continues to get the same amount of money at all costs, then that's what's going to happen. And, if for some reason you don't like the plan and you decide to go against it, then you're against the party and you're against tax reform and you're against all that. And that's why, but you can tell I'm pretty discouraged about the whole thing. But go ahead. I'll give you the last word. Sir.
Yeah, I definitely understand that feeling. And like I said, we ultimately as legislators have the final say, and we need to be held accountable for these things. And I agree 100%. What I would say, the one thing I do like about the task force is just because we have 135 members doesn't mean that every 135 members are experts when it comes to taxes or understand them as well, or it's even an area of interest that they're interested in. I would rather get the best people who know what they're talking about figuring this out as opposed to, having – that's why we have committees, essentially. We typically put people on committees who are associated with the field that, that committee deals with. I'm on public health. I work in healthcare. That's a good place for me to be because I understand it. There's people other legislators who, if you put on public health, they probably would, they would hate it.
I agree,
know what's going on. And
to that point, you're on public health now, but we had a great public health committee before the healthcare task force. We had people on there who were in the healthcare industry, but they're harder to control. And so instead of using those people who were going to have, they already had some hard no votes on there. Then so we create another task force. That's how it works. That these things are done when they want to avoid, in my opinion, the actual committee process. And I want experts too, and I want their ideas. But the problem with the task force is you guys are going to get a package, and in my opinion, it's not going to be negotiable. All of the negotiations are going to take place in the task force, and when everybody comes, they're going to be whipped up and said, "All right, if you don't vote for it, you're not for tax cuts." And that to me is just it's a way to govern that I wish wasn't the case. But I certainly agree with the idea when people say that I'm too idealistic. But Aaron, one more time, I'll give you the last word, and I promise we'll go.
That's no problem. I'd say, I think that we did accomplish some really good things. Like I said, provider level was a huge deal. Also, Jim Dawson, Austin McCollum, they repealed prevailing wage here in Arkansas. That wasn't something that got a lot of press, but I think it's a huge conservative thing that got done. And I was very happy to see that. So, I didn't get everything I wanted out of the session, but I do feel like we did some good. I guess there's obviously still more work to be done. And, now that I've kind of got one session under my belt, I'm really excited and looking forward to kind of additional conservative reforms we can get done. Because I do think, when you present a conservative case, we do have the votes. There's some things that failed that, I wish they didn't, but, we'll be back at it. And, again.
All right. State Representative Aaron Pilkington, I appreciate it, sir. Thank you so much for coming on and sharing your impression of the session.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate being on.
All righty. Yes, sir. Folks, we got to take a break. Back in a moment.